Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Automation Face-Off panel. I'd like to start off with quick introductions, and then we'll get into the meat of why we're here. I'm Chris Loader, automation for almost 30 years now, and I love to talk, so that's why I'm here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Knight. I'm the Automation Panda, the Prince of Playwright, and self-appointed bubble tea ambassador.
Hey, I'm Sarah Watkins, newly senior software engineer and test at my company. Woo! And maintainer for Boa Constrictor open source project. I'd love to be a boba tea ambassador.
You can be one too.
Thank you.
Hi, Christopher Nordström from Sweden. I teach the class Python for testers, and I've been doing test automation for at least a couple of decades. I can't remember at this point. So we're here to talk automation today.
We are. And it all blurs together after the first 2 decades. Yes. So one of the big things that actually kind of spawned this whole panel and started it off when we first started doing it is the rise of AI and robots and the fact that it's going to put us all out of work. I would love everybody's thoughts on whether or not we'll all have a job next year. Who would like to start us off? Christopher?
Go with the provocative one first, right?
Provocative. That's where we're going to start. Oh, and by the way, if you have a question that you would like to just raise your hand and I will come to you.
Yep. No, my opinion is that these sophisticated language calculators are not going to put us out of a job. That's what they are, essentially. They're awesome tools. They're excellent tools. They can speed up a whole bunch of my routine day-to-day tasks. But are we going to be replaced? No way. There's still going to need to be a human being behind the machine. There's someone who's going to need to understand the customers, the requirements. Someone's going to need to be able to express that to this AI tool to get some results out of it. In fact, my prediction for the future is that developers run a much higher risk of being out of the job than testers do, because we are much more hard to replace in the stuff that we do, interacting with other people.
Sarah?
I would agree with that. No, I don't think we will be out of a job next year, but I like what was shared in the keynotes this morning, right? Like, it's a tool. AI is a tool. It helps us go faster. It's that nitrous, right? That gives us the boost. And my experience with it is it does help like speed up those day-to-day tasks where I'm like, let me go over here, copy and paste this so I get the same structure. Boom, it's learning that, it's doing that for me and filling it out. So it's helped me be faster, but it still needs that human element. A lot of its suggestions so far is like, I'm like, try that again. No, please do not suggest that to me. So it's a tool that helps me go faster, and as like we're learning to use it, it'll help us speed up. So I would recommend learning, right? Don't be left behind, but understand, I don't think it's going to take our jobs.
Andy?
Y'all drive cars, right? Have y'all ever tuned a carburetor? Do y'all even know what a carburetor is?
Yes.
What's a carburetor do? It carburetes. Very good. It mixes fuel and air to go down the manifold to go into the engine, and that's what ignites for the compression stroke. Modern cars don't have carburetors, do they? Thank goodness. They were a pain in the butt to tune, right? It was very much like witchcraft. You had to get in there and put the pencil in, right? Now we have something called fuel injection. Fuel injection just makes that job a whole lot easier. Maybe it gets clogged every 100,000 miles. I don't know. But we still drive cars, right? You still need to drive the car, right? Is AI going to replace our jobs? No. It's just going to be better than a carburetor. It's going to help us do our jobs in testing better.
How do you explain self-driving cars?
It's a lie.
Have you seen the videos of in San Francisco?
Fair enough. Fair enough. As for me, I'd be okay with AI doing my job as long as I still got the paycheck. But you're right. It's just going to change what we do and how we do it. I don't think, someone still has to train it. I think that's just a new way for saying we're going to test it.
And I think one of the biggest problems, sorry, Andy, like,
Did I strike a nerve?
No, no, that was good. That was real good, Chris.
and I mean, I think one of the biggest problems we face right now in the industry that what we're saying here on the panel is that essentially you are the driver, the AI is the tool. The problem is that more and more people graduating, coming out into the profession, have a very limited understanding of basically the nuts and bolts, the carburetor of the computer. Some people don't even know what a CPU is or a RAM. How does a file system work? How does files work? Now, if you have that kind of a lacking of understanding of how a computer system works, how are you going to be able to express your thoughts, your requirements to the AI tool? So I think in some sense, we need to take a step back and make sure that testers, developers get a good, solid technical foundation. It still drives me a little bit nuts when I see universities and others jump on the AI bandwagon and say, oh, they're going to be AI ready for the workplace, where we probably should take a step back and do boring things like, how does a terminal work? How do you connect to a remote machine? What's an SSH key, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much stuff that you need to understand in order to work with this.
The fundamentals are getting lost.
Yes, I'm getting old.
Sure. Yes.
Question.
Yes. Yes, please.
This was a very good point. Like AI can help us, but we need to be equipped with the knowledge to make sure that it does a good job. So based on that, what would you say is the near future of testing? Should we move more towards understanding the development and coding and stuff like that? Or is the future more leaning on the more abstract, low-code, no-code solutions and stuff like that?
Yeah. Can you?
Was
The
it
folks
able
at
to
home. Perfect.
Yeah, I'll try to paraphrase. So I really like the last point about having the knowledge to make sure to correct course on the AI output. We need to have the knowledge, right? So I asked, what is the future? Whether it is for us testers to get more code savvy and understand development, or should we lean more into the more abstract solutions like no code, low code, and stuff like that?
You want to take this, Andy?
It's a good question. I'd love to start with Andy on this one.
Oh my God, that's a really good question. I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't see the low code, no code, and the pro code paths converging anytime soon, right? Because they're still catering to very different needs, very different roles, right? I think there's going to be a trajectory where the pro code tools are going to try to get developers to be more effective in quality and testing work. Things like replay, right? Things like I don't know, like Copilot helping you write out your tests and stuff, right? Trying to get developers to do more testing by making it easier for them and integrating into their workflows. And at the same time, I think on the other side of the pendulum, the low code, no code tools, they're not going anywhere because there's a significant number of people who are in the process of building software things, whether that's like an application or whether that's like a business process, that would not necessarily identify themselves as software people, who just need to make sure the things that they're building work, right? And so that's where I think low code, no code tools are going to really help them do their job. And I don't know, I don't see those two paths converging anytime soon. So we're kind of on the track of both.
And that's where I was about to chime in. I think we have to do both. I think we need to lean into the coding and understanding how it's built, and then also lean into the abstracts of how we're going to wrap our heads around what it's actually doing.
And I mean, one point to spin off of your question there is that testers don't have to know how to code, but they should be at least code aware or technologically aware of how things work. Why do I say that? Because our primary job as testers a lot of time is communication. It is talking with stakeholders. It's apparently talking with the AI in the future. It's talking with customers, developers, and all these things, all the domains that we pick up and learn, they enrich our vocabulary and they allow us to understand the other part much better. And hopefully it allows us to communicate our needs and our questions in a better way so that the developers understand what I'm trying to achieve, or I can ask the customers what they need. So yeah, testers don't have to be able to program, but it's one of those tools that, yeah, it's sure nice to have in your tool belt so you can, fiddle around a little bit with it. But most importantly, you know how to talk about it.
I like that analogy you used about like the tool belt. Do you have just a hammer? And if you have something you need a screw for, that hammer might kind of make it work a little bit, but you really want to know how to use a screwdriver. In the same way, I think it's good to know a little bit about some things. So like Chris was saying, you can talk about them. You can understand, hey, this is maybe a good option to pursue further, right? This would work for the business side of things that we need, right? Or you know enough about it to say, hey, I don't think this is what we want to pursue right now. The hammer's not the tool to use for the screwdriver. So to know enough, right, I'm going to go with we need to know both. It's good to know a little bit of these things so you can talk about them and make the best decisions with your resources, your people, your time, and what the business needs to be able to grow and advance.
I just had a thought based on what you were saying, Sarah. I'm wondering if in the testing tool space, we're hitting a moment like Kodak hit. So y'all know Kodak, right?
I was about to say, please explain.
Kodak was a titan of American industry,
Yes.
right? I know this very well. I went to Rochester Institute of Technology where Kodak had their whole headquarters. Yes. Woo! Yes. Right? Kodak for 100 years was on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. They were literally the photo company. They built the portable camera that we all have. Is Kodak still there? No. What happened? They screwed up. They didn't keep up. But why? How did Kodak make their money? Did they make their money off the camera? No.
The film.
They made it off the film. But what was the film providing? Imaging. Kodak was an imaging company. They were not a camera company. They were not even a film company. They were an imaging company. And the reason why they lost is because when digital imaging came about, you didn't necessarily need the technology that they were selling in order to do imaging. And they just went belly up. In the testing space, I think what we're seeing is that people are realizing that it's not so much about the activity of testing or the tools of testing that people care about, right? We've done testing almost as a necessary evil, depending on how you look at it, in order to do what? Provide fast feedback, in order to give feedback on the quality that's been built into the products. And so I think that perhaps the more and more we get these autonomous tools, the more and more we get better tools to help us do testing, assure quality, and provide feedback. I wonder if, like with AI and autonomous, if that's going to really squeeze down the sheer amount of time and effort needed to put into that feedback providing process. If we'll ever hit a point where it squeezes to where testing as an activity can kind of be done almost autonomously, and it's really the real value is the feedback and not in the fact that we can run I don't know how many Selenium WebDriver instances in a cloud.
A lot.
Sorry, does that make sense, or did I just
most of them are going to tell me that I should have two kinds of QAs on my team. I should have automation-focused QAs or SSTETs or whatever, and I should have manual-focused QAs. But every company I've worked for, the experience of QA has been more like what you all talked about, where everyone's doing a little bit of everything. We're taking a hybrid approach, or we're doing some automation and some manual testing. We're using some low-code tools and some full-code tools. What do you all recommend as the best approach? What's the correct path forward?
Okay, Chris, you go.
Sorry, this one's near and dear to my heart. I don't know if I'm old school or what now. I believe in separating church and state. I think testing is a skill set that I will never have in my life, but I can automate to the end of the world. right? I've worked with some amazing testers who have no desire to automate. And I wouldn't want them to because they were so good. I always speak of a guy named Jamie. Jamie's one of the ones he can smell a drop of blood in the water. He knows when the product doesn't feel right, and he won't stop until he finds it. But if I had to say, sorry, Jamie, you got to automate today, we would have missed that, right? So I'm a firm believer in keeping the two camps. I'm not saying you can't cross over. I've had lots of QA that come over and write automation, and automation goes back and helps them test. But I'm a firm believer that if you want true, really good productivity, keep them separate. But that's me.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you. I think that the roles on the team, and this was described in the Agile Manifesto already a couple of decades ago, that we want specialists on a team, basically, with their, and then as a team, we can kind of learn from each other, we can get better at each other's activities, but you want specialists from each domain. I don't want a generic vanilla engineer who's supposed to do everything really, really bad and slow. I want people who are passionate about the work. And this ties into what Chris is saying. Classically schooled testers is an awesome resource in any organization in how we approach viewing risk, in how we watch and communicate with customers, with developers. These are the things that we're naturally good at. And we were trained into that. And we stay as testers because we have an interest in doing these things, so we get good at it. So I think we definitely need testers on teams and developers. Now, that being said, there are, every situation is going to be different. In my case, for instance, I'm currently working on a remote team where we're spread out from the East Coast in North America all the way over to India. We're 6 people on the team. And I have 1 architect and I have 3 developers, and then it's me. My official title is adult person in the room. Look it up. It's on LinkedIn. And that basically means that I am doing everything that my developers and my architects don't want to do. And I like that. I thrive in this role because I do the testing. I do the test automation. I write our requirements. I do the mockups. I do our releases. I do our release announcements. I engage with our customers. I engage with our developers. I am the hub of everything there. And for me as a person, this is an awesome benefit because I get to really understand how a feature from inception to delivery is supposed to behave. Now, I am the oddball in the room. Not everyone likes throwing themselves between Playwright to Inkscape to draw mockups and then go talk with customers, etc. But in our context, that approach works really well. So it's going to be different, but we want passionate specialists from different domains joining initially.
Can I bounce off the context, right? What is your particular situation? I went from, in the current company I'm working for, being on a team that was focused solely on test automation with a little bit of manual as we're like working on those tests. And that came from a product that had no manual testing. It was the developers would write unit tests, and that was about it. Like they were expected to do some testing.
You were lucky. Most developers don't write unit tests.
Right. So there is some of that. But with that one, so I was able to focus on automation, and that product is, of all the products in my company, that one has the highest quality. The folks, the developers, the product people are very confident in every release because of the test automation we built up. So we haven't ever thought let's hire, a manual tester or someone in that traditional role because of what's there now and the expectation that's on the developers. So that makes sense for that product. Now, over a year and a half ago, my team was tasked. We were suddenly given 3 more products. Each of these products only had 1 to 2 manual testers. So we're coming in to do automation, and now I get the opportunity to work with manual testers. And one of them's like, hey, I want to learn. Where can I get started? And my first thing wasn't, here, learn C# or this. I'm like, let me teach you some patterns. I want to teach you the principles and the strategies that I use. And I'm also relying on them for their domain knowledge, because now I'm responsible for 4 products. I can't have that domain specific knowledge that they do. So in that context, right, it makes sense that there's that hybrid kind of approach. So I just really like the context part of it. What is your situation? Do you have manual testers right now? Bring out their strengths, right? Do you have automators? Bring out their strengths. Have those kind of specialists based on who you have and what your needs are. Where are you trying to go? Like, what's the size of your product?
The big thing I find, at least in my tutorials, is when I've talked about how I like to separate the two teams. And then I had one lady stand up and go, well, I am the QA team and the automation team, right? And sometimes it boils down to a lack of resources, right? I know that if Melissa was up here, she'd be spouting off about all her developers do all her automation. They have no testing whatsoever. It's all automated as they go and as they build. So again, like Sarah's right, it boils down to your need. And I know
It
it's not the clear defined
depends.
answer you'd want. It really does depend. But I personally, my teams I've been on, the most success we've had is when I left the testers to test and the automation folks and just took those tests from them and automated them. Andy?
I like to add another layer to this as well. So Sarah, if your boss put 2 tasks in front of you, one of which was to go automate a small set of tests, or another one to manually grind through testing those things, which one would you pick?
Automation all the way.
Chris, which would you pick?
Automation all the way.
What would you pick?
Yeah, I probably go with automation. Yes.
Why? Because that's the kind of work you prefer to do, right?
Yes.
You like that, right? What if your boss said, no, you must grind through manually forevermore? What would
I
you do?
Grumble. I would do it, and my passion and my
Will to live.
will to live would go down.
I'd start looking for a different job.
Same.
You start pushing square pegs in the circle hole,
Yep.
you now have a flight risk for your resources, right? So there's that aspect of it too, right?
That's
It's
a really good point.
yeah, like I mean, and that's kind of like a management leadership thing. It's like there are times that okay, maybe you have to grin and bear it, push people to do things that they don't like to do,
I've rolled up my
But-
sleeves and done my share of testing.
right?
Same.
We've
We're all
all
on the same team. The product's got to
Exactly.
go out. I
Right.
never deny that.
But if you are taking someone who is at heart a software developer in the space of test automation and saying, no, you have to, you really need to make manual exploratory a core part of your job on an ongoing basis. Or on the flip side, if you have a manual tester and say you need to go spend 6 to 12 months, learn whatever programming language, go through the Cucumber training, go through the Playwright training, go through whatever other training and become an automation engineer. Do you think this is going to go well for that person, let alone your team or company?
And what you bring
Disaster.
up there, the last part is a really good part that I talked about just yesterday. When managers tell their quote unquote manual QAs or testers to learn test automation, I call that the test automation mountain of doom. Because that's how it literally looks to someone who has never done automation or development before. For someone like Andy or Chris or you, we've done that over years and years. We picked up nuggets and pieces. We know how to SSH into a Linux machine. We know what an SSH key is. I know how NPM work with package management, etc. But for someone who has never done test automation before, it is not about just picking up Playwright and learning some Python. It is about how do I write my code? How do I make it clean? How do I even work with this thing called Git? How do I check in files? How do I push it for a code review? Oh, what do you mean there's a dependency between this version of this library and this other one here? How do I do CI? How does Jenkins work? There is this gazillion of tiny things that for those of us who have done automation, we've just picked that up in our huge and bulging tool belts at this point. But
Yeah.
for someone who hasn't done that, it is possible with enough support, encouragement, but it's going to be really, really hard, especially if this is not their passion and this is not something that they want to do. You're going to have to drag them all the way, and you're going to waste their time, your company's monies. Don't do that. Let them do what they're really good at, and then bring in someone else who can start shouldering this. I really, really hate with a passion, as you can tell, forcing people to do things they are not inclined to do naturally. It's a waste of human resources.
I had a lady in my tutorial yesterday, came up to me and said, I've been manually testing in my department. She's the only one. And her boss said, you're going to now learn how to automate, go to this conference and learn how to do it. Wow. Can you imagine? Poor lady.
Oh
We could have a whole other workshop on that.
my goodness.
Cool. We have a question. I'm coming to you as far as I can go. That was an excellent
Love
question.
The responses were all really insightful. So back to the AI part, but not, it was building on the first question, I guess. So our company, and I think more and more companies are building up their maybe large language models. In our case, we've got an image recognition model that we're building. How do you see the workflow? So right now, our workflow is the developers develop a feature, it's released to the test area. The test area is the testers attack it, try to find the bugs, and it goes back into that sprint, and we say, is that a critical bug fix that needs to be fixed in this sprint, or does it get delayed for later? Is it that important? How do you see that workflow change whenever the bug is in the large language model, not the one that we're using to write test code or to write code that implements the product, but the one that drives the large language model, the one that drives the image recognition? We find a bug in that. We say, the way it was trained, it wasn't trained on good enough data. It's not accurate enough to release this to production. How does a tester submit a bug to say, when does this get fixed? Because I've been hearing the release cycle for that is you just test it with more data. And then in the next version, after this version, is when it improves. I mean, is there any suggestions with testing and improving large language models? And how does a tester become more knowledgeable about how to test large language models?
I'll let you have this one, Andy. Because I have to be honest, I don't deal with any.
Sure. In testing these AI-based models, whether this is a large language model, an image model, or whatever kind of model you have, what we have rediscovered is performance testing. That type of testing is a newfangled type of performance testing. Classically, when we say performance testing, we think of, oh, how much CPU is my machine using? How much memory? What's my response time, right? But overall, what is performance testing? You are evaluating goodness or badness based on desired outcome of a continuous metric. This is contrasted to functional testing, which is what we normally think of a binary result of it works or it doesn't, right? So like all of your web UI, Selenium, Playwright, Cypress tests, that's all functional testing, right? You try the thing and it either did it or it didn't. Performance testing is, oh, I run the thing and I see it go and I gather these metrics and then I see what my trends are. And so instead of being on some sort of system resource of a machine, now we're looking at with these AI models, oh, what is the performance? The performance is how well is it matching a thing? How well is it delivering my verbiage for this whatever output it has, right? How well is it matching the image that you have a dog or a cat, right? That is a new way that we have to think about performance testing. And so we as testers in approaching these AI models, we need to put on our performance testing hat, start gathering metrics. And so the way in which we advocate for quality and provide feedback is ultimately the same. It's just we need to be very firm to say, you can't BS your way through and say, oh, you just need to test more data and it'll be ready. No, the performance is not good. Here's evidence that is not good. Fix it or we don't release, right? It's the same feedback mechanism, the same quality gate mechanism. It's just now we have to look at it in a new way. And so there might also be other ways that we have to evaluate these AI models. I know my friend Carlos Kidman has a great course on Test Automation University on this, on how you test AI-based models. Or he goes through like adversarial attacks, or like, you know, how bias can work its way in and give you bad results. And so what we need to do is we need to start looking at these different ways in which we apply performance testing to this space that is new and unfamiliar, but nevertheless the same old song and dance.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, you need to start testing things multiple times and start seeing how many times out of your test it fails. But you took it to a whole nother level, and it's brilliant. We need to see it as performance testing. We need to start gathering metrics. And with this, as anyone in here who have worked with non-functional requirements, that means that early on, we need to come to an agreement with our stakeholders. What is an acceptable performance? Is it okay that the image recognition fails to recognize the balloon 90% of the time, or that we have a success rate of 99%. We need to have those conversations, and it needs to be done early on in the project. And everyone in here probably knows that those are really hard discussions to have, because you need to educate your product owner and everyone else on these things. Yes, I think you have a follow-up here. Yeah.
Sorry to do this to you, but you remind me of an important part of the question, which is a lot of times the testers gather the data. Again, the engineers develop the product, the software, that component gets released to test. And it's, in my experience, the tester's responsibility to gather the data, test that against. Who should be training the model? Is it the developer, the tester, both people? I mean, who's feeding it?
Well, at least from my point of view,
Images to train on.
Can you repeat the question for the?
yeah. So I guess the question was basically, in this process, who is responsible for training the model, whether it's a large language model or it's an image model, etc. It's the developers, it's the testers. At least from my point of view, I don't know if you agree, but a tester, by definition, comes after development or during development. But I don't see us as the ones who are driving input. I could be wrong, but I just don't see that as a quality assurance or verification metric. And I would also be slightly worried, and this is what makes me worried when I talked about my adult person in the room role. I am writing the requirements. I am making the mock-ups. I am part of the development process. I am verifying it, and I'm releasing it. There is a risk that I am going to make a whole lot of assumptions wrong at the beginning of that. So for that reason, I would say that no, I probably wouldn't want to have testers train the model. And I think Andy agrees with me, or he's going to tell me I'm so stupid and so wrong.
If I may extend, when we develop more traditional software products, what we deliver is an artifact built in code. And so that is what is handed off, and that is what the testers would consume in a black box sense and do their testing and coverage on. That is the product. When we have these AI-based models, it is the data and the training that is the product, right? Because ultimately, the model is like a black box, and that you put something in and you get some sort of output out. And the way it does that is it has to have all that data and learning and training already in place.
It's the very definition of a black box.
Correct. And so that all needs to be done and then handed off to somebody for verification. It shouldn't be that it's handed off empty and then the tester has to kind of fill it up, because your results are only as good as what's in the model, right? So it should be kind of, I guess in a sense, like pre-trained, because ultimately, like what testers coming in is they're not testing the technology necessarily. They should be testing the product. And what is the product? In this case, the product is the summation of the data, the learning, and the way that the algorithms are all kind of black boxy, like working inside.
Well, as you said, separation of church and state.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
How about you, Sarah? What's your thoughts on this?
My experience with LLMs is very limited, so I haven't really had a thought at this point to contribute. I apologize. Thanks for asking, though.
Yeah. Thank you for putting me on the spot, Christopher.
Isn't that what we're here for?
Yeah. So Sarah, would you say that you are being successful in testing and automation without having to do all this AI LLM stuff?
I think so.
Boom.
I think the proof is in the metrics. So
Boom.
I have a continuous test suite that runs over 1,300 tests after every merge into a branch, plus a whole thousands of tests nightly. So own one product, and we're
all
working on
without
building that.
AI.
All without AI. My AI experience has been the last 2 months.
And I think every tester in here probably shares the feeling that introducing an AI into our verification process makes us really, really, really nervous, because it's no longer something that we have full control over. There are tools out there that does AI-based image recognition. It learns your product over time, has something moved a pixel to there. And I don't know. I may be old, but I'm very skeptical over handing over that kind of power to an AI in the end.
Handing over that much responsibility.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody have a?
I don't want to monopolize, but I'll ask another question.
Where the hand?
There's a hand
I have a hand in the back. I'm coming as far as I can go. If you want to meet me halfway,
Oh, but it's for the folks
as far as I can.
online.
So my question is about setting goals for maybe a company or a project team that is just starting off with automation. For people who don't know automation, maybe you're a higher pay grade than me, they say, oh, automate 25% of your scripts in the next 6 months. Okay, we can do that. They're going to be garbage, but we can do that, you know. So my suggestion was, why don't we start off with a few smoke tests, good quality, and then we kind of use that to grow. So how would you suggest, like for a company that's just starting or a project team that's just starting with automation, how to set goals, you know, the first maybe 6 months, first year, 2 years, something like that?
I did a whole section in this in my tutorial. You should have been my friend. Oh, so then I'm wrong too.
You want to take this?
I'll let you go, Andy, because I'm
Really?
very because for me, no, I'm gonna stop.
Okay. Okay. I'll take it. So what is less important is the tests themselves, I think, just starting off. It's not important that you hit a certain quantity of tests that you do, that they're at a certain level of your pyramid, for better or worse. What matters is that you're delivering feedback on something, right? And so when I'm starting a testing and automation project, I'm looking to see how quickly can I get that end-to-end feedback loop in place from, like, say, a developer making a change in the code to having something triggered of a build that then triggers tests and deployments and test environments, run all the tests, and then come back and give a reply, not to me as a tester that I then go deliver as a messenger, right? But that goes right back to the team where they actually care about those kinds of results and building that robustly and quickly. The most basic way to do that, get you a Jenkins server, right? Integrate it into Slack, send some emails from it, right? I don't want to be the one triaging, boom, right? Because ultimately, like, the reporting that should come out should be meaningful to somebody. If it's not, well, then I need to work on the reporting of that thing. So I'll get a few basic tests in place, smoke tests, right? And then we'll make sure that we get this full loop up and going and get that running and get that going automatically. I don't want to have to be the one triggering it. And once we have that good platform, now we can go start talking about wider test coverage. All right, then after we get so much coverage, then it's like, okay, well, maybe we should start talking about scale, right? Do I need to run these in parallel? Do I need a Selenium grid, right? Those kinds of things, and boom, 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 like that. I think chasing numbers and saying we scored 12 tests this sprint is foolish.
Yes, the number of tests. At my last company, we ran the same 12 tests for months, just ironing out the wrinkles of that whole process. And then I asked the QA team, where does it hurt the most? And we focused on that. But focusing on numbers is very, to me, is dangerous because one manual test is rarely ever a single automation test. See, I even got applause from next door on that. It really is. When people ask me, I say rule of thumb 3 to 10. I've seen as high as like 30 plus for one manual test turned into automated tests. So it gets really funny when you start playing with numbers, right?
I love numbers in general. Like, throw me a number problem as opposed to like maybe a people problem. But in this case, I hate when people ask for numbers, as has already been said here, right? Oh, automate this many is not a good metric, is not a good goal. Even we had one of our teams, they had key results or, kind of goals. Think of it to like automate so many tests per sprint. They did that for a quarter and dropped it. It wasn't valuable.
Yeah.
I would rather have a dozen smoke tests running continuously than 1,000 poorly written automated tests that don't give fast feedback or good results that nobody cares about and are just noise.
Yeah.
So when I took over one of the products, and my strategy was I'm going to get something very basic in place. I had like 3 tests and I was like, let me get a pipeline running so those tests run continuously, and then, like Chris was saying, that will iron out some of the problems in that whole process.
At a
but
smaller scale.
at smaller scale. So then I could start adding on it, and it's allowed me to add tests much faster because I'm confident in the process that I built, the feedback loops that I've built in. So then I'm like, I can freely start adding these new tests. And as I find new tests, maybe there's more things that are uncovered, but I can deal with that in small chunks at a time instead of, say, throwing 100 tests at a problem and 50 of them fail. Well, now I've got 50 failing tests to deal with. And that's very noisy, and people don't trust that kind of
I've
thing.
always told my team I'll take 5 solid tests that I can count on over 1,000 that I can't.
And I mean, we're bashing metrics quite heavily right now for a good reason. Really, for a good reason. We know that measuring the wrong metrics or measuring metrics is going to influence our work in one way or another, usually in a way that we don't want to. But I also understand that you may be in a situation, and we've all been there, where these people high above us, they don't have a solid understanding. They're busy. They don't really care about testing. They just want to have some numbers, something they can check, so that maybe they can return a report even higher up. So what do you do in those cases? Well, I would say I would really try to convince them to not focus on the amount of test cases, like everyone here just said, more like focus on the metrics for the turnaround time. How long does it take to give feedback to the developers, and also start measuring how quickly could we start, turning out the software in this case. Compare that and couple that with something like how many bugs do we find with post-release. Those kind of metrics are starting to tell us a story that is more relevant. Can we go at a faster pace, at a sustainable pace for a longer time? And
So I know some people in higher positions of power than us still want numbers.
Yes.
So let me give some numbers. 80-20 rule. How about we make 20 tests, good tests, small tests, fast tests, reliable tests, running in that fast feedback loop. Get them running. Most likely, you'll probably get 80% of the value of all the automation you'd ever need to do out of that for most applications. Easy. It's easy to send up the chain. Like, hey, if I went to StarEast and they said, write smoke tests. If we get 20 smoke tests, that'll be really good and valuable. Wow, it'll be so awesome. Numbers. Ta-da.
But the
You're welcome.
really important part is, like everyone said here, make that chain smooth. Make sure that you iron out all the kinks. This should be triggered automatically when a developer pushes his or her code, and they should have fast, instant feedback from the CI environment or GitHub workflows or wherever, so they know that their PR failed. That is the most important part. That's what's actually bringing value to the team. And once they have that, once no one has to do manual reporting or anything, then the team starts to see the value of extending that test suite themselves, because it's not a bother, it's not a pain anymore. If you write a test, it's going to be in there, it's going to be automated, executed automatically, etc.
And to quote the great Graham, an automated test must earn a spot in your test bed. Don't just write tests for the sake of writing tests. It really should serve a purpose to be there. Right?
If a test fails, does anyone care?
Also another good question.
Pick the test to automate that people will care when they fail.
Yep. I think we have time for one last question. Okay, do you want to come out again? I'll come to you.
Okay, so the vast majority of attendees to this conference are doing some level of automated testing, but according to the DORA metrics I saw in a session yesterday, only 17% of companies are doing CI/CD. 1 or 2 tips to automated testers that are looking to get from here to there.
Shift left. There you go.
I have a rant deep inside, but I'm going to hold it. Y'all go first. I will rant, but y'all go first.
Sarah, I'm out.
Well, I mean, one thing you can do is learn a tool on how to set up a CI/CD pipeline, or
I'm going to step in if that's okay. Sorry. One thing that tends to happen is that this tends to fall on testers. One thing I want to say is make sure that your testers in the team collaborate with the developers. Make this a team goal. Make sure that the team agrees that, yes, it would be a good thing for us to set up a Jenkins server or CI/CD environment. That would be a good driver to start this.
Yes, thank you. You said the thing I was thinking and didn't say. I'm ahead of myself. Get team buy-in. Get the team buy-in, because if you're doing it by yourself or your team,
And make sure it works. I've been on teams where we couldn't. The setup and everything just to run the automation was too lengthy. So yeah, we ran into Jenkins, but it was not part of a CI/CD pipeline. It ran on a schedule because it was just the only way we could do it. Right. So not everything will fit, again, round pegs, square holes. Right. So make sure it's what you need first. Andrew, would you like to rant us out?
Yes. So before I give the rant, I'll give the proper answer. So there's a wealth of CI/CD tools. You want to be super lean, super awesome. GitHub Actions. You've got GitHub. You can use GitHub Actions. Boom. Right. Also, you don't need to shove your entire test suite through continuously. Right. When Sarah and I worked together, on our project years ago, we had a smaller set of tests that would run continuously within a certain time box of like 10, 15 minutes, so that during the day developers could get real-time feedback. But then we would have like 1,000 plus, multiple thousands of tests on different banking configurations. They would run overnight, and that would be more batch, take a couple hours, come in the next morning and see it. So like not everything has to be all continuous all the time, because there's not enough compute power or money in the world to make that happen. Now for the rant.
That wasn't the rant?
No, that was the answer. The rant is we've screwed up DevOps in software. DevOps has become the greatest gatekeeper I've seen at almost every single company I've worked at, right? Because what we did is we're like, oh, we had Agile and all these other stuff, and then, oh, DevOps, where Dev and Ops are working together. And it was this whole philosophy about how we can, break down silos and integrate roles, and developers would know more about operations and cloud and all this kind of stuff. But what happened was DevOps then turned to really meaning just ops and security and cloud. And then Jenkins and CI all got lumped into that responsibility. And so every company said, oh, we're having a DevOps transformation, which means we're going to have a DevOps team who's the ultimate gatekeeper of everything, so you can't touch anything. And so a lot of people, especially like testers and automation engineers, were like, yeah, let's go add this new job or this new step to this existing pipeline. They're like, no, you can't touch that. That's not secure. We can't give you access. And so it just became this bureaucratic wall that prevents us from doing the things that they said we should be doing. Rant over.
Wow.
So on that, my team has been like getting those keys back from our DevOps, because our DevOps is that ultimate gatekeeper. So we're like, hey, this will be one less slash in your list of things. Let us do that. Let us adjust our pipelines, right? Like this kind of, and it's been helpful for us. Quicker turnaround time. We maintain that. But
Again, collaboration.
And that's what DevOps was preaching from the beginning.
I
Breaking
know.
down the walls, making sure that we work more over the boundaries.
They became the machine they raged against.
Well, on that beautiful note, I think we'll wrap up the panel. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you, fellow panelists, for agreeing to get roped into this with me.
No problem.
And
Thank you for
everyone, enjoy the rest of your conference.